Welcome back. The city of Chicago is facing a nearly $1 billion budget deficit for fiscal year 2025. And the mayor says everything is on the table to fill that hole, like raising property taxes, a hiring freeze, and cuts to city services.
Hello, everyone. Wait just a minute. What? Let me hear that again.
Chicago is facing a nearly $1 billion budget deficit for fiscal year 2025. And the mayor says everything is on the table to fill that hole, like raising property taxes, a hiring freeze, and cuts to city services.
Chicago, what happened? I thought the Democrats would never, ever raise your taxes. So are you telling me that the Democrats lied again? Turns out the city of Chicago has spent nearly $500 million assisting the migrants. And now they have around a $1 billion budget deficit.
Consider these numbers. More than 6,000 people still live in city-run migrant shelters. That means costs are still adding up. Since August of 2022, the city of Chicago has spent more than $400 million, according to the city's spending website. Nearly $253 million went to one private company, Kansas-based Favored Healthcare Staffing, which staffs the shelters. Another $76 million went to Equitable Social Solutions.
This is why I love finances. I'm passionate about the numbers because they never lie. But let's check out Mayor Johnson about a year ago telling us how he was in support of leaving his citizens behind for the new asylum seekers.
You know, this is a global crisis. The policies that are impacting population shifts around the globe is affecting us all. These are asylum seekers. These are not illegal people. The moment they step ground on American soil, they are now officially protected by international law.
Wow, he's just that dumb that he doesn't realize that seeking asylum is now another loophole to enter America without being properly vetted. Whether it's for someone that does want to work hard, but unfortunately is skipping the line in front of millions of immigrants like myself and maybe you watching, who are paying their fees and waiting their time to get the documentation in order, or the authentic asylum seekers, who we know is a very small group of people, or a violent criminal who can kill anybody without thinking about it twice, or a terrorist who have an agenda to harm America from day one. All of them can come and say, I crossed the border and I'm an asylum seeker, and this guy doesn't get it. Just look at him. Look at the way he's saying it. He's totally lost. He's either incredibly naive or beyond dumb. Either of those attributes is not good for a leader to have. Mayor Johnson, and that's why Chicagoans don't like you anymore.
I'm standing here tonight with buyer's remorse because I supported Mayor Brandon Johnson. I feel like a fool right now. I feel like a plum fool. But I tell you what, it's okay. Because as I said last night, you can slap us in the face by ignoring us today, but we are punching you in the face by ignoring you at the polling places tomorrow.
And some of you voted for sanctuary. If anybody needs sanctuary, black people need it. The black people have issues because you have poor black leadership.
Now, to align yourself with somebody who's obviously a one-term mayor, if he even makes it that far, you better be worrying about your job. You better be worrying about your longevity, because we're going to vote and we're going to get you out because you ain't doing right by us. That's what time it is.
We need that money in my neighborhood. We need that on my block. So I'm asking y'all to use our tax money for our people. We need it.
You vote for the money for these immigrants today, and we coming for them seats. You can believe that.
The police are fighting with them in the shelters that you guys are funding. You guys think it's a great idea, but yet your police officers are getting attacked. Your public's getting attacked.
Speaking of police officers, I hope they hang in there because there won't be any new ones.
Well, Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson is enacting a hiring freeze and strictly limiting overtime to combat the city's budget woes.
Now, this is effective immediately. And by the way, it does include both the police and fire departments. Chicago facing a forecasted $223 million budget hole for the remainder of this year and a nearly $1 million, or rather billion with a B, dollar deficit next year.
Tell me that's not genius. Support non-citizens using the citizens' money and then halt the hiring of new police officers. But what can you expect when you see who this guy surrounds himself with? I mean, one of his aides is known for having a massive hatred towards cops.
Controversy brewing in City Hall as reaction continues to pour into incendiary comments allegedly made by a top aide to Mayor Brandon Johnson.
Now, Fox 32 unearthed audio where that aide allegedly referred to police as pigs, and it has aldermen calling for some big changes in the mayor's office.
If I die, especially at the hands of pigs, like, don't name after me. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't want a piece of legislation named after me, a road, none of that. But like, I would be honored if that like got more folks to abolition.
Incendiary comments calling for the abolition of police.
Oh, Kennedy Bartley. Nobody will ever name anything after you, believe you me. With the exception of maybe me. I can name my trash can after you. In fact, I just did. My trash can is now known as Kennedy Bartley. Can you believe it? This is exactly what the victim mentality does to you guys. What a total joke. We always have to find a way to blame the white man for everything. These leaders have all the power to make things so much better, but they still blame it on oppression. Isn't that right, Mayor Johnson?
We're fought in the same system that doesn't humanize black people across the globe. And isn't it quite disturbing that you have an entire party that is more interested and dedicated to destabilizing black and brown people around the globe than actually passing a freaking budget to make sure that people can eat and have somewhere to live?
Chicago, this is what you get for voting identity politics. What you have right there on the screen, with the exception of perhaps the sign language expert, are a bunch of corrupt criminals. They lie to the people, they steal from the people, then they go home, eat, sleep, and repeat it all over again the following day. And if they weren't a bunch of corrupt criminals, then they wouldn't have a nearly $1 billion budget deficit. Listen, stop doing this to yourselves. At this point, you or I could probably do a better job than these cons. Now, Mayor Johnson, I know he's watching. You guys think that these politicians don't watch videos about them? Their ego is so big, they can't help it. If they were busy doing their jobs, then none of this disaster would ever happen. They spend more time on social media than both of you and I put together. So, Mayor Johnson, you're a disgrace. I think you're the dumbest mayor in America, and you should resign immediately. That being said, it's time to discuss the details of this $1 billion embarrassment. Let's get started. All right, guys, I think it's common sense to start with Kennedy Bartley's story because she's on the taxpayer dime thanks to Mayor Johnson. And so it is only logical to comprehend who he is surrounding himself with while running the city of Chicago.
Yeah, Scott and Sylvia, several alder people this afternoon are calling on Mayor Johnson to fire his managing deputy of external relations, Kennedy Bartley, after we unearthed 2021 podcast interview footage where she referred to police as, quote, effing pigs.
If I die, especially at the hands of pigs, like, don't name after me. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't want a piece of legislation named after me, a road, none of that. But like, I would be honored if that like got more folks to abolition.
Incendiary comments calling for the abolition of police. Bartley allegedly made them during a 2021 podcast entitled This Is Your Afterlife with Dave Marr. They come during a conversation about the killing of a young African American in Colorado.
The police lynch black folks every day. You know, shoot black folks and brown folks and, you know, down every day in the street. And there's still black folks and brown folks who are like not abolitionists, who are pro-police.
Last week, Bartley's city responsibilities were reportedly expanded to oversee the mayor's legislative affairs team, in charge with lobbying city council in Springfield to support the Johnson agenda. It's led to turmoil in the department and at least one high-profile resignation. Today, some Chicago alderpeople said they won't work with her.
Can you imagine the police officers protecting Mayor Johnson and his aide? How do you go to work after listening to that?
That they won't work with her.
I'm beyond disgusted by it. You know, it's unacceptable. It's another demonization of the police department. She should have been vetted a lot better before she's brought on as a staff member, especially on the 5th floor. That's a representation of our city hall, and it's unacceptable.
And I definitely don't want someone so left-wing that we as aldermen can't work together to move things forward for our community.
Fox 32 reached out to the mayor's office for reaction last night. In a statement, the spokesperson didn't directly acknowledge the comments, but said, quote, Kennedy Bartley serves the mayor and will be supporting the mayor's vision for comprehensive public safety. Under Mayor Johnson, the CPD budget has grown, and just last October, the mayor negotiated a 2-year extension of the CPD's collective bargaining that doubled scheduled Chicago police raises for this year and next. But that assurance not enough for 2nd Ward Alderman Brian Hopkins, who today called on the mayor to let her go, a call echoed by the 41st Ward's Anthony Napolitano.
Should be fired immediately. Not even given time to resign. Fired immediately. Have her box waiting outside with all of her stuff in it at the front door of City Hall on her way out.
Amazing. And there you watched it again. More gaslighting from the mayor's office, saying that under his leadership, the CPD's budget has grown. But we just learned that there is a hiring freeze of new police officers. Oh, and they are keeping Kennedy Bartley. Here's another reaction from Alderman Anthony Beal.
If I die, especially at the hands of pigs, like, don't name after me. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't want a piece of legislation named after me, a road, none of that. But like, I would be honored if that like got more folks to abolition.
So, Alderman, that was allegedly the voice of Kennedy Bartley, Mayor Johnson's managing deputy of external relations. She was just given a promotion of sorts. Your reaction?
Well, first of all, it wasn't allegedly. That was her. And those are her views. And those are the agenda that her and her organization have been pushing here in the city of Chicago. And, you know, I'm sorry that she wasn't thoroughly vetted and she should not be on the payroll. And, you know, I actually joined the course or the choir to have her removed immediately. She should not be on the government payroll. She should not be paid by taxpayer dollars. And if these are the type of people that the mayor wants to surround himself with, then, you know, that explains exactly why the city is in turmoil and chaos that you see right now. We are in the middle of a dysfunctional administration. When you fire 4 people in IGA for no apparent reason, you know, those were 4 African-American women that were doing a great job building relationships, but then you hire someone who's radical to be over them with those kind of views. I think we are definitely in troubled water right now, and we need to make sure that she gets fired immediately and be removed from city government.
You see, that guy right there should be the mayor of Chicago. Now let's get to the $1 billion budget disaster.
It's largely driven by uncertainty over how to meet a $175 million pension payment to Chicago Public Schools for non-teaching staff. There is also a decline in revenue from state-distributed personal property replacement tax and funding for the city's new arrivals mission. Now, during a budget hearing just last month, city officials did not rule out a property tax increase to help fill the budget gap.
Good morning to you. How did we get to this point?
Well, we knew that this cliff was coming years ago. We knew we had a pension deficit that was coming. And we knew that, coming out of the pandemic, things were still slow. Coming out of the pandemic, downtown is still recovering. And so we've been looking at all these different things going on that really caused this hole. But we didn't do anything to prepare for it. We spent all the COVID money creating programs and creating additional jobs. And now that COVID money is running out, that's adding, more deficit to our revenue on a day-to-day basis. So we didn't do anything last year to raise property tax fees or fines or anything, and we just kind of punted last year, and that also added to this hole. And so it was a compound of really bad judgments that really got us here.
It sounds like you're almost blaming yourself for this. Was it you? Was it the mayor's office? Who's to blame?
Well, it wasn't me, because I voted against every budget the last 5 years. And so it was definitely the guidance of the administration that really pushes the agenda as far as our budgets are concerned. And so when you look at our budgets, it's the mayor's responsibilities to present us with budgets. And, I've been fighting tooth and nail about all these bad decisions that have been made. And it's just right now, it's not enough of us in the city council to, really right the wrongs that are going on. When you look at the fact that we spent $814,000 on a wrought iron fence during the pandemic, knowing that we have a deficit, why would you do something like that? Why would we spend over $600 million on migrants when you know we have a deficit like this? Why didn't we have a hiring freeze or start furlough days back in March and April if you knew we had a deficit like this coming? And so there was no preparation. So it's just bad decisions going forward.
And just to clarify, because he did mention the $600 million figure. So the state itself has spent over $600 million to migrant care. And the city of Chicago has spent over $400 million. Incredible. But now let's watch this same journalist interviewing the city of Chicago budget director, Annette Guzman, and check out the difference in their response.
Chicago City Council members are facing a difficult challenge: how to fill a nearly $1 billion budget deficit. So joining me now is the City of Chicago Budget Director, Annette Guzman. So this is a big one. The city is $982 billion in the hole, and you have said that everything is on the table to eliminate this shortfall. And again, I want to repeat that. Everything is on the table to eliminate this shortfall. What does that mean for the city?
It means that we're looking not only at, what new revenues or increased revenues that the city can bring in to support the operations, but also, taking a really hard look at, our expenditures. Right now, though we are recovering and really moving past the pandemic, our expenditures are rising at a faster rate than our revenues are. And so we have to take a good look at what are the services we're providing, what are the operations that we may no longer be able to provide without increased revenues.
Are we talking about property tax increases here? Is that one of the options? Property tax is one of the easiest ways for the city to raise revenue, and frankly, for most municipalities to raise revenues, it's one of the largest tools that we have, and so it is something that we're looking at. But I can tell you that property tax increases are felt differently depending upon where you live in the city, and so we want to be really mindful and careful about which revenues we are seeking to ask the city residents to contribute to before we pull those levers. And Annette, how did we get to this point? Almost $1 billion in a budget deficit. That's a lot of money going out, not a lot coming in.
Yeah, while, we saw a little bit of a reprieve during the pandemic with, a lot of COVID aid coming into municipalities, states, and around the country, it's really a story about our expenditures. We have obligations that are all hitting at the same time, whether it be, contracts that were recently negotiated for our labor, or the, new requirements or newer requirements that have been placed on the city as it relates to pension obligations.
Over the amount of money that the city has spent on the migrant situation, $300 million at least so far. Could that money have been used to fill this budget gap?
So I think there's two things to just be really clear with your audience about. The city's portion of that amount is actually rather small. Though we have budgeted for a certain amount this year, there's a lot of funding that we received from the county, from the state, and the federal government to support that work. So while we are really transparent about how much has been spent, that's not all city dollars. I think the second thing to be mindful of is that we've actually saved a ton of money in how that operation currently is operated. One of the things that the mayor talks about, and then I talked about when I briefed journalists last week, is we are forecasting over $200 million in savings within our corporate fund for this year. And, that's actually not very normal for the city to have that much in forecasted savings. So, from my perspective, we are doing our part to already kind of tighten our belts, and we're going to do more to ensure that, we are able to meet the resources that are provided.
So there you have it. We have saved over $200 million, but we are around $1 billion broke. Perfect. I think she should be fired. In fact, all of them should be fired, and a new team should come to get the job done right the first time. It's called accountability. And she gave us more lies, saying that, oh no, we didn't actually spend a lot of money on the migrants. It was a lot of federal. No, it's a lie. They spent a lot of money on the migrants. It's been reported, and we actually have the numbers. I'll show them to you in a little bit. But that's how the Democrats always hide themselves. They say this certain amount of money was allocated for migrant assistance, and so it was never going to affect any other budget. That's BS. Needless to say, here are the numbers.
Now to NBC5 investigates, which for months has followed the money trail tied to Chicago's migrant mission. Total spending now tops more than $400 million.
Now, despite the creation of a city spending website, it's still not exactly clear where all of that money has gone.
Consider these numbers. More than 6,000 people still live in city-run migrant shelters. That means costs are still adding up. Since August of 2022, the city of Chicago has spent more than $400 million, according to the city's spending website. Nearly $253 million went to one private company, Kansas-based Favorite Healthcare Staffing, which staffs the shelters. Another $76 million went to Equitable Social Solutions. That company partnered with another called ReloShare, which helped identify and sign lease agreements with property owners of the buildings that eventually became the migrant shelters.
That's where a number of those leases are.
But when we asked the city months ago for copies of these lease agreements, we were given just 9 out of 27. The use of these private companies has helped mask from public view where the public dollars have flowed. What we didn't know until now is how much the property owners of the migrant shelters were earning. But thanks to a new lawsuit, we're being provided some more clarity. A lending company filed this lawsuit last month against 2 Chicago developers, alleging they did not make it clear when they signed a loan agreement that the building in the West Loop would be used to house migrants. What is not in dispute is that the owners of the Ogden shelter are paid $150,000 a month by ReloShare as part of a use agreement. That means in a year's time, they'd receive more than $1.8 million. The lease agreement also calls for additional payments of up to $400,000 if the number of migrants inside the Ogden shelter exceeds 650. The latest figures show more than 700 people still live here.
The corruption is massive. And if it wasn't for that lawsuit, we wouldn't have those additional numbers. But Mayor Johnson has been trying to keep these numbers under wraps as much as possible.
If there are public dollars involved, shouldn't the public know where they flow? 100%. Back in March, Alderman Andre Vasquez, the chair of the City Council's Migrant Committee, told us aldermen themselves have had a hard time accounting for all the spending. I guess that's still the question that's out. When we attempted to ask Mayor Brandon Johnson about this at the time, he said this.
Again, we're meeting you right where you are.
Were it not for this new lawsuit, the public would have no idea how much these property owners are earning.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you.
We pressed the mayor about this last week and asked if he would consider adding the information to the city's website. He said this.
We have given an accurate account of how dollars have been spent.
That's it? Is there anything that would preclude your administration from sharing that level of detail?
There's no information that has been kept from you.
Johnson then reiterated talking points he's made before, how he's renegotiated contracts to save taxpayer money, and how Congress has failed to provide additional financial relief. He also doubled down, incorrectly stating that all spending information is available.
That information is available to you, sir.
Not all of it, though, is, sir. I mean, that's
Can you give me a specific example of what's not available?
The Ogden shelter in the West Loop, that's what is spelled out in this lawsuit, that they get $150,000 just for being the property owner per month. Nowhere is that available on the city's spending website. My question, again, is simply, is there anything that would preclude you from including that level of detail? You guys have said you're transparent. Why not show it?
All of the information related to the spending to this mission is available.
That's where we left it.
What a filthy liar. Ladies and gents, that's the mayor of Chicago. Wow.
Frustration hit a peak at a city council meeting as aldermen and residents keep clashing over how taxpayer money should be spent on migrants. The council's Immigration and Housing Joint Committee couldn't vote or even start the meeting because some members didn't show up. But people still got to speak during public comment, and Alderman MaricelaHuerta-Paz announced a November referendum where voters can decide if the city should tax millionaires 3% to help migrants.
We have 120,000 millionaires who live in the city of Chicago who can pay the fair share, and there are solutions so that we can do both. Care for new neighbors as well as the current neighbors.
Are y'all lying to us? Because, see, we know that the budget stated that you guys spent $400 million on the migrants who are illegal immigrants last year. The city is currently in a $235 million deficit, which means that you guys overspent the budget to pay for people who have not paid any taxes.
Chicago millionaires run for the hills. That's what I would do if I was a millionaire in Chicago. So you're telling me that because I'm successful and I worked hard to be where I am, I have to pay for the migrant care because the government and that fool said so? Absolutely not. But that's just the front. They will tax the middle class to death. That's the goal, to get rid of the middle class and replace you with brand new voters. And that way they can have a one-party system forever. Do not forget to follow me everywhere. The shout outs of those of you that go the extra mile to support my content is down below. Please smash the like button, subscribe, and share this video with at least one person. Let me know your thoughts about this complete and horrendous situation in the comment section below, and I will see you guys next time.